Good morning. It is Tuesday, November 2nd, 2021. Welcome to the latest edition of the National Newspaper Publishers Association's Let It Be Known. Liberal justices warned that guns, same-sex marriage, and religious rights could face limits if Texas wins abortion case. Uh, uh, Justice Sonia Sotomayor warned that constitutional rights enshrined in Supreme Court decisions concerning gun rights, same-sex marriages, birth control, and other contentious issues could be open to attack depending on how the court handled the Texas abortion ban cases that were in front of it yesterday. The court's attention in Monday's arguments was not on its previous abortion precedents. We're going to talk about that this morning. We're also going to talk about Alzheimer's this morning and the prevalence of that illness in the African American community. But first, let's bring on the president and CEO of the National Newspaper Publishers Association, Dr. Benjamin F. Chavez Jr. Dr. Chavez, good morning.
Good morning, Stacey. I hope to be with you, but I'm in Atlanta, Georgia today, helping to get out the vote on behalf of the National Newspaper Publishers Association. Atlanta, across Georgia, and Florida, and Texas, and New York, other states. This is election day, and I hope everyone has already voted. If you didn't do early voting, you got to get out today. And I know in some places the sun is shining, some places it's raining, but we got to vote. Vote is precious to Black America. And so, on
Well,
behalf of Karen Carter Richards and the National Newspaper Publishers Association, we greet everybody on this election day on behalf of the Black press of America.
and Dr. Chavez, a quick note before we get to the headlines and before we bring our distinguished publishers on and our other guests. Jesse Jackson is in a D.C. area hospital after falling while at a protest for Howard University students. So our best go out to Jesse Jackson this morning as he tries to recover from this fall at Howard University yesterday.
Yes, we send our prayers. Jesse has a lot of resilience. Reverend Jesse Jackson, at 80 years old, he's still on the front line, and we appreciate his leadership, and we pray for the restoration of his health.
Yeah, and Dr. Chavez, this morning, Senator Joe Manchin has dealt a new and heavy blow to President Joe Biden's hopes for getting his agenda passed. The Democrats should stop playing games with the $1 trillion bipartisan infrastructure bill, according to Joe Manchin. He said that progressive lawmakers in the lower chamber are holding the bill hostage. And he said that it won't earn his vote. The $1.75 trillion spending package won't earn his vote either. He said his objections, he stated his objections, by calling a very unusual news conference yesterday. He says that Biden's Build Back Better package will be voted down if the Democrats can't come to an agreement that he's comfortable with. We know that the president wanted to get this done last week, and it had appeared it had finally gained some momentum late in the week when Senator Manchin had signaled his support. Now he seems to be withdrawing that support.
Well, I think it's not done deal yet. Remember, this is the week. This is just Tuesday. The Senate as well as the House, they go up and down. I still have confidence that they're going to get it done. This is political upmanship. And Manchin and Sinema, they're trying to get everything they can in the bill that will help them in their reelection in West Virginia and Arizona, respectively. But the other senators and the other members of Congress also have constituencies that they need to pay attention to. But the thing is, this is President Biden's, both bills are President Biden's bills. And I think both of them are going to get a vote this week.
All right, well, we will see. Dr. Chavez is also in the news this morning. Years of housing segregation and redlining have contributed to Wisconsin imprisoning its Black residents at a rate higher than any other state in the country. Criminal justice experts have said 1 in every 36 Black persons are currently in prison in the state of Wisconsin. Black people represent 42% of the state's total population, or prison population, I should say, despite accounting for only 6% of the total population. The report that came out yesterday uses data from the U.S. Census Bureau and the Bureau of Justice Statistics. Also found that Black people in Wisconsin are also nearly 12 times as likely as white people to be in prison, well above the national average and behind only New Jersey in the rate of racial disparity between Black and white people. So, wow, Dr. Chavez, Wisconsin is quietly
Mass incarceration. But again, Wisconsin is representative of all the other 50 states. While yes, it's disproportionate in Wisconsin, but the truth of the matter is, in all 50 states, African Americans are disproportionately incarcerated. And that's our work. We got to call it out. We got to challenge these racism in the criminal justice system, racism in the judicial system, racism in America. And every time these reports come out, it only verifies what Rushmore knew in 1827. We have to plead our own cause. We have to lift up the interpretation of this data so that people don't get hoodwinked. There's a serious problem in Wisconsin, no question about it. But it's also symptomatic of a serious problem across America. And that's why the Black press is so important.
Yeah, absolutely. And Dr. Chavez, Justice Brett Kavanaugh floated the possibility of Texas abortion law becoming a model for states to restrict other constitutional rights, such as gun rights under the Second Amendment. Here to talk about it this morning, our publisher from the Texas Metro News, Cheryl Smith, and our publisher from the Westside Gazette down in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, Bobby Henry, and journalist, columnist, Percy Busby. Perry, good morning. Perry, I almost drew a blank on the Perry part.
Good morning, Stacey. Good morning, Dr. Chavez, and the rest
Good
of the
morning.
guests.
Well,
Morning to all of our guests.
Yeah, good
well,
morning.
they say ladies first, and truly ladies first. And Cheryl, we know that you are all things Texas. This Supreme Court taking up this measure from Texas is really interesting because, again, as Justice Kavanaugh himself said, this thing could affect even religious rights.
Yes, this is really a case. Well, but interestingly, as we talk about Texas and what's going on with SB 8, you don't hear a lot of Black folks talking about this. This is more a white issue when it gets down to things, because we're talking about what the numbers are going to look like, especially in Texas. And you see people jockeying for seats and power, because in 20 years things are going to change, and especially for Black people. But Texas is doing some crazy things, and people are talking about it, between voter suppression and just trying to say, when you say that a woman, about restricting abortion after 6 weeks, and most women don't know they're pregnant in 6 weeks time. And so this Texas law will impose the nation's toughest abortion restrictions, and it's something that everyone is fighting for, because we know that the Republicans are lined up, and that this is just one of many issues that we're going to have to be addressing. So we have election today, but we're not voting on people, we're voting on propositions. But as we get ready for the midterm election, we have to see some changes. It's like we have to see some changes with Dr. Chavez being in Georgia, because whittling off, slowly but surely, that's what's happening. And Democrats have to be a lot stronger in the race. And we were talking earlier about, wrapping this up, we were talking earlier about the rain and people not getting out to vote. Dr. Chavez, please tell me it's not raining in Georgia.
No, it's not. It's not raining in Georgia yet.
Well, and the Texas law, it also awards private citizens. It says that its enforcement is outsourced to private citizens who are awarded as much as $10,000 if they bring successful lawsuit against an abortion provider or anyone else who aids and abets the procedure. But Bobby Henry, just as important, as the justice said, this is not just about abortion. Justice Kavanaugh says that other rights. And I'm reading here what he said, including gun rights, freedom of speech, religious rights. All of these things can be affected if they allow this law to stand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So let's kind of play this thing forward. Yeah, those laws are extremely important. But what we're dealing with, what we're finding out here, is that the mental health of young folk is becoming to be a pandemic, if you will. When we have teenagers here in Broward County who have committed such a hideous crime by luring a young man out with the proposition of sex and then having him killed by three other teenagers, you know, that to me that just, it doesn't checkmate a proposition like what's happening in Texas, but it puts it all under the spotlight of mental health, and that's a serious issue that we're dealing with. So,
yeah, and Perry, I know you cover a range of issues down there, and I know not just down there, but your reach is national, if not global. But this issue of SB 8, what is your read on the Supreme Court here, Perry?
Well, in this case, from what I've read, Texas has configured this in such a way in terms of the citizens' bounty, as you will, that it almost puts it out of reach of the federal government, which makes it even more hideous in its nature. Because, as you say, if I can now begin to entice someone about abortion, then what's next on the menu? And so I think we're again coming to a slippery slope. What may look good now for Republicans, I think will ultimately end up in turmoil if we are not bringing some adults to the table on this issue.
Yeah, adults need to be at the table for sure. Dr. Chavez, again, you as Cheryl Smith alluded to, you're in Atlanta. Talk about, could you just wrap this up in a bow for us, this Texas abortion law and what the ramifications could be broadly?
Well, the Texas abortion law is really about white supremacy. And they don't call it that, but that's what it really is. It's about the browning of America is taking place rapidly in Florida and Texas and Georgia, throughout the United States. That's what's going on in Wisconsin. And they're making laws at the state level to repress the vote, to repress women, to repress African Americans and other persons of color. So it's the tip of the iceberg. I think Justice Kavanaugh is right, that if the Supreme Court allows this measure in Texas to be found constitutional, then other states are going to wind up doing this similar. So it's a test case. We saw how many state legislators in Texas, African American, had to leave the state to try to stop these voter suppression and outright, what I would call human rights violations in Texas. So I think it's, again, why we need the Black press. And I think Bobby is right about connecting the whole issue of mental health. I think that, can you imagine our young people today who are constantly bombarded with challenges to their humanity, challenges to their peoplehood, to our communityhood? And unfortunately, when people who are oppressed, we start internalizing our oppression, then we start doing violence to each other. We start harming our own selves. Suicide is also up in the African American community. It's not because of COVID, it's because of racism. And I think that we have to be on guard. We have to link health rights with environmental rights, with civil rights, with voting rights, with economic rights. Look, when we breathe, the right to breathe means that we get our right to breath, not from Republicans or Democrats. We get that from God. And I think sometimes we get out of line and then we wind up having all these maladies where we turn on each other. So I'm still optimistic that if we can not only keep our people awoke, but it's to be active. I think C.T. Vivian had the best definition of movement, and that is Black folks moving forward. Stop standing still, stop being paralyzed, stop getting frustrated, and let's move. We got to move on election day. I don't care what the weather is. We got to get ourselves out there and vote.
Well, Bobby, and I'm gonna let you go real quick. I just wanted to lift up what Greer, our producer, was saying. She says that they are testing what they can get away with. So go ahead, Bobby, because I have a feeling you were going that way too.
No, because when Doc was saying what he was saying, he has this uncanny act to take what you're saying and put it out there just so it could be digested by the whole. But what I was envisioning was, I don't know if you guys are familiar with a blue heron, the bird that stands in the water and hunts its prey. I envisioned this frog that was in this bird's mouth, and he reached down and was choking the bird. He wasn't giving up, even though half of his body was inside. And that's what systemic racism is doing to us as a people. But we do have the strength and the fortitude that no matter where we are, to reach out and grab that thing by its neck and choke it until we can get our life back. So that's what came to my mind. So, and white supremacy and racism has caused a lot of mental health issues. And Doc, you're absolutely right. It is the key factor that I believe that is causing all of this chaotic stuff to happen, and white folk to get scared, and Black people to be in fear about their lives being taken. And what else can we do? Where else do we strike out?
Well, we're going to have to segue. We got to get back to this topic and see what comes out of that Supreme Court. We will stay tuned and listen in on what goes on there. You can follow us at all of our papers, Texas Metro News, the Westside Gazette, and of course, blackpressusa.com. In 2021, Alzheimer's and other dementia will cost the nation $355 billion. And by 2050, these costs could rise as high as $1.1 trillion. With that in mind, Dixie Ann Black, a health and wellness consultant, joins us now. She's actually caring for a loved one with Alzheimer's, and she's a celebrated author as well. Good morning to Dixie Ann.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Thank you for having me, and thank you especially Bobby Henry for extending this invitation. My heart, when I hear you guys speak, all of it comes together, right? Dr. Chavez, you said, when we breathe, we get that from God, and when we're out of line, we get all these maladies. That is the essence of Alzheimer's. Yes. Alzheimer's is largely 80% a lifestyle disease, 20% genetics. But you guys know, with the new science, epigenetics tells us that we don't have to be what the genes of our parents say. It all depends. You remember that Trading Places movie, nature versus nurture. It has to do with how we live our lives. And especially as people of color, we're getting away from that, far away from that balance. You guys are talking about suicides and stuff that never used to be in the Black community. And then, as Bobby was saying, in terms of being that frog that reaches for that heron's neck and try fighting for our own life, our own breath. In that fight, we lose that balance of being able to get the right foods, engage in our community, because we're so busily out of balance, engaged in that struggle. And so with my mom, I would just, as a quick note, say that's exactly what happened to her. My mom became a caregiver and then lost even the cognizance of caring for herself. She would work 24-hour shifts with very little sleep and all kinds of crazy stuff. And so it was no wonder. My mom was one who drank herbs and took natural supplements and all this. And just, she's 77, she's young. And watching this happen and her not going to the doctor, not picking up on those signs, has made me very, very cognizant. My father is turning 80 this year, and people think he's my husband or my boyfriend. He's so young and spry. So it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be this extreme. And so I'm very honored and very excited. Again, that Bobby's so forward thinking in having this, and not just stories about my mom, but putting little tidbits and pieces to talk to people about lifestyle, about returning to who we are, because that's really the essence of it. We're so busy fighting and engaged in a fight that we are forgetting the other part of life, that balance of community and taking care of ourselves and each other. And I say to this, yes.
Yeah, I want to bring Cheryl Smith back in, because I want to talk about this too with you. 53% of Black Americans, it's according to research, trust that a future cure for Alzheimer's will be shared equally, regardless of race, color, or ethnicity. In other words, Cheryl, Black folks just don't trust that there's going to be a future cure. And if it is, it won't be shared equally.
You're so right. For anything involving African Americans, and they call it an emerging public health crisis among African Americans, because when we look at dementia, when we look at how we're being diagnosed, not only for dementia, but fibroid tumors, all of the issues we're dealing with. And I happen to live in Texas, where the top 3 out of 10 of the cities in Texas, we have a pandemic. When you talk about environmental racism, because you talk about the businesses, the major companies who are dumping in our communities. And Dixie is so right. We wake up fighting. It's early in the morning now, and all of us here, we're fighting in Atlanta, fighting in Florida, fighting wherever we are, because it seems like everyone is against us. You go to the doctors, you have to tell them, get several diagnoses from different doctors. We're trying to understand Alzheimer's and understand the difference in dementia and Alzheimer's. My father had dementia, but guess what? We're seeing younger, and Dixie, I'm sure you've seen younger women, and Black women and men are suffering from dementia, Alzheimer's. They are dying. And while we say most it's a brain disorder among people 65 or older, no, we can't say that, because it's reaching us younger. And I submit that it has a lot to do with the stress we're under. It has to do with the food deserts in our community.
Yes, ma'am.
Out the door, when you see men and women, and especially our brothers, driving in a car, and how it becomes a parade if there's a police car nearby, because they don't want to even ride alongside a police car because they fear being stopped. We're just dealing with so many issues every day. And then you say, is Alzheimer's, even us understanding it. I talked to the doctor. I had to understand when they said my father had dementia, and then they say you can die from Alzheimer's. I don't think people realize what happens to your body, what happens, how the brain shuts down, so it shuts your body down, and what this means for our community. So we have a lot of work to do, and we have to remain vigilant, and we have to have people like Dixie, like NMPA, embracing the causes and continuing to make health one of the top issues that we address in our communities.
Yeah, and Dixie, one of our viewers, Angela Conley, is asking, does mental and physical abuse contribute to dementia?
Absolutely. That's back to the fighting. And that's where the stress comes in. So when you're fighting for your life, whether it's against your own loved ones or the system, racial issues, whenever you're fighting, that stress, it increases your chances of getting dementia exponentially. And I love what Cheryl said about the food deserts, because one of the things, and this, if we get cut off right now, and I never say anything else, I want you to remember one thing: the gut is now being called the second brain. And sugar, the amount of sugar that we consume, especially us as Black people, is astronomical, and it is killing us, because sugar feeds every disease. Sugar feeds inflammation. And so I'm putting that in there because it's absolutely foundational, but it also has to do with how we handle stress. Because when we're stressed, we grab something quick, we grab something sweet, and we're supposed to 60 teaspoons of sugar a day, 6 teaspoons, a Coke, has 39 grams. 28 grams is what we're supposed to have. One Coke just kind of wipes out all your sugar for one and a half days roughly. So when we're doing those kind of things in the middle of in stress, you can't think clearly, you don't have the time, you feel nervous and rushed, and you make poor decisions.
Yeah.
And yes.
Yeah, and Perry Busby, let me bring you back into the conversation as well. Older Black Americans, according to stats, are about twice as likely to have Alzheimer's or other dementias as older whites. And right now, there's an estimated 6.2 million Americans over 65 living with Alzheimer's dementia. Perry, what have you found? Or put it this way, what questions you might have for Dixie Ann Black on this topic? Oh, Perry, you're on mute.
You're muted. Hey, Perry.
Good morning, Dixie. Dixie and I are brothers and sisters of the pen.
Yeah.
But no, Dixie, you raised some great points. I have dealt with Alzheimer's as a son-in-law, with my mother-in-law, and also with my mother. And I think you talked about lifestyle changes, and Stacy, those numbers are frightening, because one of the things I look back on going through those experiences is, as a child, I think we sometimes ignore signs that are really red lights with our parents, and because our parents have been these strong figures in our lives, we sometimes look past those small signs that lets us know that things are not as they are. And I know in both of our cases, I think with my mother, the fact that we were all scattered led to not just her making some bad medical decisions in terms of who a healthcare provider was. And by the time we came in, the issue had gotten much worse. So you talked about lifestyle, and I think that as we become these grandparents and great grandparents, it's one of the things that I think we need to start preparing our children for, as well as in terms of transition.
So Perry, Dixie, and real quick, unfortunately we're running out of time, but what would you give us a couple of those red flags that Perry talked about? What should be looking at in our loved ones?
So Perry, excellent point about the doctor. First of all, make sure that you or your loved ones have a good doctor, that you don't just take your blood work for granted and let them tell you, oh, everything is okay. Need to be checking issues. If a loved one starts to not being able to smell or hear, all these little changes that we take as normal aging, question those. And speak with each other, siblings and stuff. You notice mom's, forgetting where the sugar is, or, let's hope she leaves the sugar out. Things like that. And also being a pilot in your own health. Don't rely on, and I think it was Cheryl who talked earlier about having these, not just the food deserts, but Black folks and getting medical care. That's one of our issues. When we go back to what we know, to the herbs, to what our forefathers did, then we will find our health. We won't need a pill. Every medication you take has at least one side effect. So you take 2 or 3, oftentimes medications mimic Alzheimer's in their effects. So one of those things is to have all your medications checked. And I'm going to tell you something. You're going to have a battle with your own primary care. Most of them never had a day of nutritional classes in their lives. That's a new thing in medical school. And secondly, they believe that Alzheimer's is incurable. And to a certain extent it is. But before you get there, when you have your hand around that heron's neck, you choke him, and then you find your way back to your pad, to what you're from, so that you can heal yourself before you have the disease. The time to be healed is before it becomes a full-blown disease.
Dixie Ann Black is the author of Just Chasing the Sun and Bring the Dawn. Dr. Chavez, a quick final thought, and we'll bring Bobby Henry back for a quick final thought as well.
Well, I want to collectively and personally thank Dixie Ann Black for her leadership. First of all, for caring for her own family members and caring for others. I think what we learned from today's broadcast is that our relationships with one another are vital. It's hard to fight for freedom if we don't have good health. And I think that we're developing an app right now for the NMPA. And I've been asking publishers, what do you want the app to do? And I'm pleased to report this morning, Stacey, that health is rising to the top. Having good health, how we share information. And what Dixie Ann said is so correct, that we need an interdisciplinary approach. You can't just get all your information from one source. We need multiple sources. And that's why the Black press is so important, that we raise these issues, not just for dialogue, but also for solutions. And very often the solutions are within our own grasp to help the professionals. Certainly we get the professional advice, but then you have to also weigh it in our own cultural and family-related situations. There's nothing new under the sun. And what you know, it's interesting to me that we're in this technology age. We have so much information, but also there's so much ignorance. There's so much half-truths. There's so much stereotypes out there. And so part of the thing to navigate, and Bobby, this is what contributes to some of the instability in mental health, is that sometimes we get confused about, well, who we are, where we are, and what we should be doing. And that's, again, why I don't want to put too much on the Black press, but this is our responsibility. At the end of the day, truth will set us free. But in order to get that truth, you have to have access to it.
Yeah, Bobby, I don't see Bobby Henry, but I wanted to get a quick thought from Bobby, but we are out of time. I know. Here's Bobby. Bobby, real quick.
Okay, Stacey, thank you very much, Dr. Chavez. Thank you, Greer. Thank you. I would ask that everybody that's listening, please take the opportunity to read as Dixie chronicles her mother's progression with Alzheimer's. It's extremely important. And as she was saying, if you can, put a little space in your house, in your apartment, outdoor, and create a garden, something that you can grow some healthy stuff and just enjoy it, enjoy working in that, and enjoying the pleasure of you attempting to get back to what we actually come from. You know, it's the dirt in the pot that makes the flower grow. So let's get back to that, and let's really take care of each other. Remember, it's a mighty poor dog who can't wag its own tail. But if that dog is not healthy, it would create some more tension in him trying or her trying to wag the tail. So let's get healthy, y'all. And thank you very much.
Well, we thank you, Bobby Henry. Cheryl Smith, publisher of Texas Metro News and Messenger Media, and also Mr. Percy Busby and Dixie Ann Black, and of course, Dr. Chavez. Every morning, it is such a privilege to sit here with you to discuss the news that affects Black America. In the words of Nelson Mandela, for to be free is not merely to cast off one's chains, but to live in a way that respects and enhances the freedom of others. Thank you for joining us. We will see you tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.